Let me push back a little bit because I do think, the self-deprecating thing, you can take it too far. And I mean, we have to deal with, Paul saying, imitate me as I imitate Christ.
Favorite Star Wars movie to date, Rogue One of the new batch, okay? I think we can all that's fair. That's a good meeting ground no matter where you are. One of the reasons it's my favorite, it's a line, and it is good. When the line hit me, I wrote it down. I'm like, oh, that's a preaching note. And I actually have it hanging in my office, and it says this: careful not to choke on your aspirations. Remember that, right? When he's like Darth Vader is such like a dad joke when Darth Vader's saying it, but I'm like, that's actually it's really good because we can. And chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, one of the reasons you're listening to it is because you want to suck less, right? And you're hoping that we are all trying to suck less. So you want to be better. And I think that that's a good godly ambition that puts in us. But I was on the 9 Marks website, and Phil Newton was writing an article about the right and wrong pastoral ambitions. And I just think it's a really good question to have. Like, where's the line between like this is a healthy ambition to have in ministry versus this is not coming from a place of health and maybe coming from a place of insecurity or maybe coming from a place of pride? Does that make sense? So do you have any boundaries that you would have to kind of keep you in check between, okay, go do this, this is good ambition versus this is not good ambition?
I mean, I often think, I feel like because I was in student ministry for so long without this position of being a campus pastor, where a lot of you guys have been in this a lot longer, I was able to kind of meditate on this thought a lot and actually try to demonstrate this in my student ministry as much as I can. And sometimes it's hard because you don't have the resources that a whole church have in your student ministry. But I often think about, there's so many pastors we can name, whether it's Driscoll, whether it's the guy in Willow Creek, whether it's the other guy in Chicago, whether it's Perry Noble. Like, when the church puts the entire weight of the church on this one individual figure, the church cannot sustain those shoulders, right? Like, the shoulders cannot sustain that. Like, one thing I really admire Matt Chandler is him decentralizing his multi-site and making it multiple churches. Even though, like, I fully support multi-site churches, I admire that because Matt is so trying not to make it about him, even though he's such a great dynamic personality or whatever. And so I often think about, like, the more I feel the nudge about making it about me as I'm posting clips of my sermon every day of myself, the more I make it about me, the more I'm like concerned of like, this is going to be a problem. And so like the tangible way I was able to do that in my student ministry was to be able to give speaking opportunities to other leaders, to be able to even bring students up to kind of raise up the next generation of communicators. So that way I'm not the face of the ministry, but I'm more of like the overlord of the ministry, kind of organizing it. That's probably a terrible term.
So you're not Darth Vader. You're the emperor.
I'm like the emperor.
Way to go,
yeah,
Palpatine.
He's not Vader.
Yeah, but so I think like, because I know my shadow side. I know where I'm weak. And if it was up to my flesh, it would be 100% about me. And I would I would be the one in the meeting saying, like, let's make sure all the cameras are angled towards me and all the directions to be funneled through me. And when I feel those inclinations, and this is not a humble brag, this is me being sincere. When I feel those inclinations, that's when I need to press against my own desires and be like, okay, I need to make someone else the face. I need to encourage and push someone else, because when it's more about me, then the ministry is going to go wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's fair. Kind of like, the more I think about me, the more I'm like, why don't I help start a podcast with a bunch of guys who are like so much better than me, So that's
exactly it.
So much better. No,
way better looking. We're wearing the same shirt. He's a model. I look like a tomato wrapped in the gray cloth. Okay, anyways, sorry.
Well, we are equally influencing each other. I got you to trim your beard to my beard height.
Wow.
I feel like that's the win of 2020. But some of this was predicated on 2020.
Such a low bar. It's been a crappy year.
Well, okay, then there we go.
Yeah.
But some of this, one of the reasons I went here with this article is actually because of a podcast you guys sent me. You sent me that podcast. Man, if you haven't heard it, this needs to be in the show notes, where the guy sat down with the two elders from Mars Hill.
It's so good.
And he talked about just what happened when Mars Hill went down. And actually, this part 2 just came out recently.
Yep.
And I remember one line that was recorded that Mark Driscoll said, and I'm going to be honest, I don't think he started here in his heart, but because the church loved him, he allowed his heart to go here. And he said, I am the brand. In that, he said, he goes, me standing on a stage holding the Bible, that's what moves Mars Hill. And when I heard that, I was like, man, okay, we may not come out and say it, but let's if we're going to be super transparent, every pastor feels the weight to be known in their community. I mean, because we want to help the community. So why wouldn't we want to be known in the community? So I feel like there is this thing of like, I want to be known, but then again, I don't need to be known. So how do you, I think sometimes God will let us out on that because he knows what we can and cannot handle. And if we push against that lid, it just looks like we're trying too hard. Does that make sense? And then sometimes God opens up spaces. I see that in some of your own ministries, how like you didn't ask for that. I think that's why I can rag on some of you guys, because y'all haven't asked to have certain platforms that you have. And I think that's why God gives you what he gives you.
If we were not recording this to send out to people that we don't know super well, we could, hit stop recording and we could all list 3 or 4 people that we would all chuckle and be like, oh yeah, man, that's someone that is trying really, really hard to be known as this, that, or the other. And I think just in general, you can tell when it's happening naturally and when someone is seeking it out and climbing and only shaking hands with the people that are going to get them farther, or when someone is doing good ministry. And because they're doing good ministry, they're attracting good people and they're getting good opportunities. There's a big difference between the two.
Yeah. And Andrew, we talk about this all the time, dude, even not just on the podcast or on our show, but just personally, we talk about this idea of how do you know if they're an expert in ministry? They proclaim they're an expert.
Yeah,
like that's it. They just say it.
Hey, buy my book.
Right.
It's published by me because I can't trust Zondervan.
Or they don't trust me.
Yeah, but it's but in this world of digital marketing, it doesn't matter if you know what you're talking about. It matters if you know how to market it.
Right.
And so we're in an age, we were saying earlier that a generation ago, no pastor would ever have to worry about posting what Falwell posted because they just wouldn't have had the option to post it. So it would have been funny for the people that were there on that yacht. But a generation ago, idiots could not market themselves as geniuses, but here we are.
Yeah. And I think, he gives some really good litmus tests of like, how do we manage this? One of the ones he says is, are my actions calling attention to myself or to Jesus? And I think that to me needs to be kind of a North Star for a lot of us. It's like, okay, why am I doing this? And but we all know, because we're pastors, we're wordsmiths, we can create the mental gymnastics, right? To say, oh yeah, I need to do this because the kingdom needs it, right? So if you're feeling like you have to do mental gymnastics, I think that's another sign that maybe this isn't a space or an ambition you should be pursuing. So
you made me remember this one small little litmus test, or like thing that when you write your sermons, that can help you deal with your ambitions or what you're promoting, is when you are talking about like a moral figure in an illustration in your sermon, if it always points back to you doing the right thing, then there's probably something wrong, right? Like oftentimes I'm self-deprecating because that's my sense of humor, but oftentimes I much more quickly will show like my fault of like, yeah, I get angry. Like I was short-tempered. I was vain. I was whatever, rather than saying like, in the face of sin, I was triumphant. Not that that's not real, but if every sermon is me showing how awesome I am with the Holy Spirit, then there's probably something wrong. Where you talked about this in the morning after ministry this morning, is I would use the story of the lady who on her deathbed, you're thinking about her pressure washing your church. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would exalt other people demonstrating godliness before myself, because that's when you start making it where I'm the man of the cloth, he's untouchable, look how godly he is, because every sermon he's showing how he resists sin, how godly he is, how perfect he is. And if that's all my people are hearing, and not like how like I have this wicked, depraved flesh that everyone else has, then that's where we can start kind of exalting ourselves. Where I rather make it about if I'm gonna say, look at how someone lived a godly characteristic, I'm gonna try to find someone else before I point to myself.
Yep.
Because then I feel like it's teetering too close to my own exaltation. Right.
Yeah, I think being the punchline as the pastor, it just not only is it good for not coming across as that guy, but to show your people, hey, look how dumb I am, or look how this trips me up.
Right. It's a classic Doug Fields move. So if you've been in youth ministry for any length of time, Doug Fields is the king of this. If you've ever heard him speak, whether it's at a conference or in a sermon, he is so good about putting himself down in a playful way, but it also brings him to a place where it's like, okay, he's not elevated to this other world. And I think as pastors, that's kind of where we need to be as well.
And in sermon preaching, I think, yes, we are not always the kings. I think it's sometimes say I'm a human, and it's okay to say you have the victory. But man, on the whole, like throwing it on other people is wise. But I also say we need to translate that to what we were talking about at the open onset of this episode about posting online. I've heard those pastors there. It's like a humble brag. It's the picture of their eyes in their forehead, and behind them's like 2,000 people. And it's like, I'm so humble that this mega church would fly me halfway across the world so I could speak to these 3,500 people about their belief in Christ.
I'm scrolling through Frank's Instagram right now.
Hold up. The only reason I know this is because I was going to do this. I went and spoke at this school, and I took a picture of like me. I'm like, and as I'm about to go hit enter, I'm like, this was just on me, but it's like, dude, that's my heart checking me right. Like, why am I doing that? So, but it does help market you better. But yeah,
I gave Tim so much crap. He had changed his Facebook profile picture like himself holding a microphone.
There was no crowd. It was me holding a Bible.
But it was,
for the record,
it was like, it was very much. Yeah, it was. And I gave him.
Okay, that profile picture lasted about 8 hours. I took it down.
And boy, did we have fun laughing about it.
Oh, boy. Friends are the best.
And a friend's a friend forever.
All right, so let me give you
a douchebag.
Let me push back a little bit, because I do think, the self-deprecating thing, you can take it too far. And I mean, we have to deal with, Paul saying, imitate me as I imitate Christ, and being able to say that to people as well. So I don't know, it's just, we're going to live in a tension, and that's just that's part of the chair we sit in, so to speak, as the main leader of a congregation. I actually read an article today, and when you brought up this Clergy Cliff Note, Dell, it made me think of it. I don't know if you guys know who Scott McKnight is. He's a New Testament scholar. He wrote a book called The Blue Parakeet. Would recommend you read it. You might not agree with it, but it's good to read. But he has a blog on CT called Jesus Creed, and he just released a post today called "Help My Pastor is a Narcissist." And there's some crossover, but he uses the Mayo clinical summary of narcissism, because it is a clinical diagnosis. But here's five here's 5 ways to know that you're a narcissist, or that your pastor is a narcissist, which is what this article is about. But if these hit you, then it's, it would be a good thing to really think through. Number 1, if you have an inflated sense of importance. Number 2, if you have a need for admiration. This is a big one for me. Number 3, if you have signs of troubled relationships in your life. Like if you have a bunch of relationships in your life that are troubled or tense. And then number 4, a lack of empathy for others. And number 5, you're vulnerable to the slightest criticism. So if you have those, then I think it's a good thing to do some heart checking and pray through, because
you just
those
described
are
an Enneagram 3. I mean, that's all.
That's all the signs of a
3W2 right here.
So I would recommend, maybe we can put this blog post in the show notes as well. But it's a good one.
Yeah, so I mean, what you guys are all saying is it really does come back to, it's not just what's going on the external, but it's what's going on the internal too. Because I do have some friends, man, they could post a picture of themselves in front of a crowd, and like I know that's coming from a genuine place, But because I do struggle with that, which is some woundedness even from my childhood, just being the geek in class, I know why I would post that. So I do think it's hard for us to just make a blanket statement. But I think what I'm really driving at is not choking on your aspirations, and like checking your own heart with everything you say and you post. Where is it really coming from? The well. Because my mama always said in her South Carolina accent, what's down in the well is going to come up in the bucket.